All right, everyone, welcome back to the Underestimated Podcast. It's your host, Jeremy Orr, back with another episode. So, listen, in today's episode, we are going to be kind of covering the top five most misfortunate careers in NBA history. I did a episode similar to this maybe 10 episodes ago, um, where I did the top five most, I think I worded it, unfortunate careers in NFL history. So if y'all want to go check that out, it's on the tube and it's on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. Excuse me. Um, so I want to make a quick disclaimer here before we get into this. Now, when I first initially had the idea to make this episode, I that was back in January of last year, actually. So I want to let it be known here. The five guys that I'm going to be talking about in this episode, right, are all guys that were retired at the time that I first had the idea to make this episode. So, therefore, I'm going to leave this guy as an honorable mention because if I were to just leave him off the list completely, regardless of the fact of when I made this episode, y'all would have grilled me for it. So I'm gonna try to make everyone happy here in a sense. I know all of you will be expecting to see Derrick Rose on this list. He is not on this list simply because he retired in September of last year, which was 8 months after I had initially made the idea for this episode. So I will implement him here as an honorable mention. Obviously, we know that Derrick Rose a is a name that's on the tip of every basketball fan's tongue when talking about misfortunate careers. The youngest player to ever win the MVP award. You know, Derrick Rose was on a trajectory toward becoming one of the best point guards in NBA history. But a devastating torn ACL in his left knee during the 2012 playoffs derailed what looked like a future filled with greatness. Over the following years, multiple knee injuries kept him from returning to his MVP form. However, at the time I originally conceived the idea for this episode, Derrick Rose was still an active player in the NBA. Since I wanted to focus on retired players, I've left him off this list. But make no mistake, Rose's career is one that will always be associated with the what could have been narrative, right? And so his resilience in returning to the league and finding success, even as a role player later on in his career, is nothing short of remarkable. And Derrick Rose is undoubtedly one of the greatest what if stories in NBA history. Obviously, y'all know that if he had been retired at the time I initially came up with the idea for this episode, he would have obviously been, if not number one, the strongest number two on this list. But let's actually get into who is actually on the list. Coming in at number 5, I have Greg Oden. Greg Oden was selected as the first overall pick in the 2007 NBA draft by the Portland Trail Blazers, a decision that came with enormous expectations. Standing 7 feet tall with a dominant presence in college at Ohio State, Oden was widely regarded as one of the next great big men. His potential to anchor a team in both ends of the floor made him one of the most hyped prospects of his generation. However, injuries began to plague his career from the very start. Odin missed his entire rookie season due to microfracture surgery on his right knee, a devastating blow to a promising career. Over the next 5 seasons, he played 105 games, repeatedly sidelined by recurring knee injuries. Despite brief flashes of brilliance, including a 24.15 rebound game early in his career, Odin could never stay away from injuries, and he could never sustain a healthy, long enough career to fulfill his potential. Imagine what could have happened had Odin been able to develop alongside Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge in Portland. A trio that could have been a force in the Western Conference. Today, Odin's story serves as a reminder of how fragile NBA careers can be, and he remains as one of the biggest what ifs in league history. So, how about we take a dive into who was a part of that 2007 draft class? Mind you, at the time of that draft class, Greg Oden was the number one pick. I'm sorry, the number 2 pick. That draft class had players including Kevin Durant, Mike Conley, Al Horford, Marc Gasol, Joakim Noah, Thaddeus Young, Jeff Green, Nick Young, Wilson Chandler, Corey Brewer, etc. So, I mean, not necessarily the strongest draft class. I mean, most of these guys went on to be successful role players. I mean, the only studs that you have in here is like Joakim, Marc Gasol, Al Horford, and obviously KD. So, and then I mean, at the time I started watching basketball, my early on years came from me being a Miami Heat fan. So, the Miami Heatos, so to speak, with Dwayne Wade, Chris Bosh, obviously Bron, Ray Allen, Shane Battier, Mario Chalmers, Norris Cole, Mike Miller, Chris Birdman Anderson. That's the team I grew up loving to watch. And I think that even one of those teams at a certain point had Greg Oden on it. And, you know, that young as a young NBA fan, I'm thinking, oh, Greg Oden's a pretty good, pretty decent role player. Not knowing he was a top 5 pick early on, well, later on in my years, finding that on later on in my life. So, looking at it, you're talking about a top 5 pick that averaged 8 points, 6 rebounds, and not even an assist his entire career. So he played 3 seasons, 2 years in Portland and 1 year in Miami. That's wild, man. I mean, obviously, y'all know the likelihood of how frequent 7-footers are being put into the NBA nowadays. Like, he had the blueprint, but injuries just sent him on a decline that he had pretty much no control over. Now let's jump into who I have at number 4 on the list. Coming in at number 4, I have someone who is near and dear to my heart because he is a Duke Blue Devil alum. And y'all know when it comes to college ball, college sports in general, I rock with Duke. So, I'm talking about Jay Williams, y'all. Jay Williams entered the NBA as the 2nd overall pick in the 2002 NBA draft after a legendary career at Duke University, where he won a national championship and earned the Naismith College Player of the Year. With the Chicago Bulls, Williams was expected to become their franchise point guard and lead them back to prominence in the post Michael Jordan era. In his rookie season, he showcased glimpses of his talent, averaging 9.5 points and 4.7 assists per game, including a triple-double against the New Jersey Nets. However, his career came to a sudden and tragic halt after a motorcycle accident in 2003. The injuries he sustained were catastrophic, leaving him unable to return to the court. What's even more heartbreaking is imagining the trajectory his career could have taken. His leadership and skill set might have taken, but it was just thinking about how he could have helped rejuvenate the Bulls during a critical rebuilding phase. And so although his NBA career was cut short, Williams has found success off the court as a respected ESPN analyst and motivational speaker, inspiring listeners with his story. And I think we can all take from Jay, how to show some sort of resilience and perseverance. Now, like I said, he's from the 02 draft class, which is obviously the year before LeBron James came into the NBA. So, players in the 02 draft class, you had obviously Amar'e Stoudemire, Yao Ming, Carlos Boozer, Caron Butler, Tayshaun Prince, Nene, Luis Scola, Mike Dunleavy Jr., Matt Barnes, and obviously, Udonis Haslem. Once again, not a superior or strong draft class. Still think easily had he, had it not been for injuries, he would have easily sustained his notoriety in being the second overall pick in that draft class already. Now this one just sucks because like the first guy we mentioned, Greg Oden, he was in the league for 3 seasons. That was it. Jay Williams played his rookie year and then never touched an NBA court again as a player. So let's look at some of his accolades the first one is going to be his NBA All-Rookie Second Team in 2003. But everything else is pre-NBA. So he was NCAA champion in 01, National College Player of the Year in 02, 2-time NABC Player of the Year, 2-time Consensus First Team All-American, 2-time First Team All-ACC, 3rd Team All-ACC in 2000, ACC Tournament MVP in 2000, ACC All-Freshman Team in 2000, has his number 22 retired by Duke, and was a first-team Parade All-American in 1999. And he's also in the Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame. So, man, it just sucks because I think we all just know how electrifying Jay Williams would have been had he had a longer tenured NBA career. But, a motorcycle accident just derailed that. And I mean, can't blame him for that. I mean, everyone wants to have a life outside of basketball, and he was just, I assume just trying to have some fun, and it just ended up being an unfortunate circumstance or disaster just happened. Now let's dive into who I have at the number 3 spot. Brandon Roy. Brandon Roy was the 6th pick in the 2006 NBA draft and quickly established himself as one of the league's premier guards. Known for his smooth playing style, clutch performances, and incredible basketball IQ, Roy was a 3-time All-Star and ended the 2007 Rookie of the Year. In just a few seasons, he became the heart and soul of the Portland Trail Blazers, leading them to multiple playoff appearances and giving them hope for a bright future. Tragically, a degenerative knee condition forced Roy to retire after just 6 seasons in the league. Despite attempting a brief comeback, his body couldn't hold up under the physical demands of the NBA. So Brandon Roy's potential was extraordinary. He was a player capable of single-handedly taking over games and leading a team to championship contention. Had he been able to play a full career, he might have been one of the greatest shooting guards of his generation, of my generation actually, because he was drafted in 06. That was the year I was born. So even so, his impact during his short career was obviously undeniable, and he remained a beloved figure in Portland for what he accomplished in such a limited time. I mean, I think it's safe to say we all know B. Roy was an absolute dog. Like, even I know that at my young age. Like, I know B. Roy was a dog. I've seen the highlights. I've seen the tape. I've never obviously seen it live and, in person or whatever, or through a TV. But I've seen the outside sources of it. I've seen what he was capable of, and dude was an absolute stud. Now, the 2006 draft class isn't a draft class that I ever remember hearing being talked about. So I'm even interested myself to see who was amongst him in this draft class. So you had LaMarcus Aldridge, Kyle Lowry, Rajon Rondo, Paul Millsap, Rudy Gay, JJ Redick, PJ Tucker, JJ Barea, Thabo Sefolosha, Andrea Bargnani, Randy Foye, Jordan Farmar. So once again, another draft class that maybe outside of the first 5, and I mean even I think the first 4, I think that's pretty substantial. Like, I don't think there's no getting around that. But talk about B. Roy, JJ, and Rudy Gay. I think that's pretty much interchangeable to how you perceive the game of basketball. Now, despite Brandon Roy's short career, he still managed to average 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 5 assists throughout the course of his career. And like I said already, 3-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA, and 06-07 All-Rookie team. I mean, he was 9th in MVP voting in 2008-9 season, where he averaged 23 points, a steal, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, shot 82% from the free throw line, 38% from 3, and 48% from the field. Y'all, I'm telling y'all, like, B. Roy was... I still feel like he was one of those ones without, having a long tenure career. He played 6 years. Man, what could have been if Brandon Roy even got to a 10 or 15 year career? Which he was close, but obviously, injuries. All right, we've reached the last two on the list. Now, coming in at number two, I have another Duke legend, Grant Hill. Grant Hill entered the NBA in 1994 as the third overall pick and immediately made his mark as one of the league's brightest young stars. With a rare combination of versatility, athleticism, and leadership, Hill was often compared to legends like Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen. During his early years with the Detroit Pistons, he was a perennial all-star, winning the Rookie of the Year award and leading the league in triple-doubles. However, Hill's career was derailed by a series of ankle injuries, compounded by a life-threatening staph infection following surgery. These setbacks robbed him of his prime years, leaving fans to wonder just how great he could have been. At this peak, Hill was a legitimate MVP candidate who could score, rebound, and facilitate at an elite level. Despite his injuries, however, Hill showed remarkable resilience and reinventing himself as a valuable role player per the later part of his career with the Phoenix Suns. His ability to adapt and prolong his career earned him a place in the Hall of Fame, but his story is still one of unfulfilled greatness. Like, you really got to be in tune with the game to understand how much of a cerebral talent Grant Hill was. You're talking about a Swiss Army knife. Someone who could literally do it all. Not just on the opposite side of the ball, but on defense as well. Grant Hill was 6'8". Now, he's from the 94 draft class. Now, this had a draft class along the lines of players like Jason Kidd, Eddie Jones, Juwan Howard, Jalen Rose, Brian Grant, Donyell Marshall, Wesley Person, and Lamar Murray. And also Glenn Robinson. Now, I don't know about y'all. I'm going to be real. As somewhat of a casual basketball expertise, I did not know a vast majority of those names that I just called. And I doubt any of y'all did either. Easily saying that probably aside from Jason Kidd, even with his short career, Grant Hill was still the best. Well, it depends how you want to put it. I mean, maybe might be some bias in there, but I may put Grant Hill over J Kidd. But I mean, I wouldn't be opposed to it being a 1-1-8 situation. That's fine. But Grant Hill was just incredible. You're talking about someone who averaged 17 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists throughout the course of their career. So Grant Hill actually Grant Hill played 18 years in the league, but it wasn't 18 years of dominance. Looking at this, it was probably let's say 10, 12, which is still not bad. That's still actually pretty good. But he could have just had He could have just have had so much more than what he did have. Now let's just cover uh, the overall resume of Grant's career. 7-time NBA All Star, All NBA First Team in '97, 4-time All NBA Second Team, NBA Co Rookie of the Year in 1995, along with Jason Kidd, NBA All Rookie First Team in '95, 3-time NBA Sportsmanship Award, 2-time NCAA champion, consistent first team All American, consistent second team All American, NABC Defensive Player of the Year, ACC Player of the Year, 2-time first team All ACC, second team All ACC, number 33 retired by the Duke Blue Devils, third team Parade All American in 1990, McDonald's All American in 1990, and Virginia Mr. Basketball in 1990. In his career, 17,000 points, 6,000 rebounds, and 4,000 assists. And like I said, he was also an Olympic gold medalist twice and was implemented into both the Basketball Hall of Fame and the Collegiate Basketball Hall of Fame. Now let's get into who I believe is in all facets deserving of being numero uno on this list. Nobody other than Anthony Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway was selected as the third overall pick in the 1993 NBA draft and quickly became one of the league's most electrifying players. Standing 6'7" with the skills of a point guard, Penny drew comparisons to Magic Johnson for his ability to create plays and dominate games. Paired with Shaquille O'Neal in Orlando, Hardaway helped lead the Magic to the NBA Finals in just his second season, establishing himself as one of the brightest young stars in the league. However, injuries began to take their toll, and starting with the knee injury in 1997, that marked the beginning of his decline. So, as Shaq left for the Lakers, Penny struggled to carry the Magic on his own and eventually became a shadow of his former self. At his best, Penny was a transcendent talent capable of becoming the face of the NBA. His combination of skill, flair, and charisma made him a cultural icon, further amplifying himself by his iconic Lil Penny Nike commercials, while his career remains a story of untapped potential. Penny's legacy as one of the most talented players of the 1990s is firmly cemented. Now I want y'all to take note of something, right? Even though I'm young, I'm going to always make sure I inform y'all of history, because we cannot just stay stuck in the present day. We have to acknowledge what came beforehand, right? So you look at people nowadays like Cade Cunningham, Josh Giddey, Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball, DeJounte Murray. Just saying, the taller point guards in the NBA or today's game, Penny and Magic are the ones who basically paved the way so that those guys could have some sort of success in the NBA today. Now, when it comes to a point guard, what I deem as a point guard, I always take away from Penny and Magic because of the size. So when I think of a true point guard, I always say Chris Paul, because he's 6 foot, 6'1", 6 foot. So, man, Penny was just. I actually saw this documentary. It was a 30 for 30 on the Orlando Magic, basically more so highlighting Shaq and Penny. And to most, in some regard, a lot of people would say, now would I be one of those to say this? Not necessarily, but I could understand it to a certain degree. Some people are to say that Penny and Shaq was Kobe and Shaq before Kobe and Shaq actually became a legit thing. But I mean, Penny was simply incredible. I watched that documentary, and I mean, I've seen plenty of tape of Penny, not just in uh, Orlando, but in Phoenix as well. And that dude was just incredible because Penny was just that Showtime like of a player that you just had to implement it in your life in some way, shape, or form. Now, this was obviously the draft class where, so the way this worked out was Shaq had obviously told the Magic, like, look, you want to make me happy, keep me here for a longer tenure, go get Penny. So I don't understand why they just didn't go ahead and take Penny number one, but they took Chris Webber number one, and then Penny ended up going 3 to the Warriors, and so they just swapped players. Chris went to Golden State, and obviously Penny went to Orlando. And actually, Sean Bradley was the one that was picked in between both of them. But in that, that draft class in '94, obviously it had players along the likes of, like I just said, Chris Webber, Sam Cassell, Vin Baker, Allen Houston, and I mean that alone just kind of kills it. Like, Penny was easily, with the injuries, the best player out of that draft class. So Penny had a career in which he averaged 15 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Now, Penny played 14 years, but just like I explained with Grant Hill, it wasn't a full-on career of dominance. Penny probably had, let's say, 7 years. Half of that was probably dominance. So, now we're talking about someone who was a 4-time NBA All-Star, 2-time All-NBA First Team, All-NBA Third Team in '97, All-Rookie First Team, where he was the second voted player to win Rookie of the Year. Consistent First Team All-American in '93, 2-time Great Midwest Player of the Year, number 25 retired by the Memphis Tigers, and a First Team Parade All-American. Also to mention that he not average, but throughout the course of his career, he had 10,000 points, 3,000 rebounds, and 3,000 assists. And he was an Olympic gold medalist in 1996. But that's going to be it for me, y'all. I appreciate y'all tuning in like always. Like I said, my socials, not just my socials, but the podcast socials will also be within this contraption. If y'all hadn't watched it already, episode 34 is out now, talking about Juju Watkins and how much of a special talent she is. That is out on YouTube, and the audio-only version is out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So, y'all go get that. And obviously, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And always remember, don't underestimate, appreciate. Without further ado, gone.